The setting is a quaint Victorian house at the edge of Willow Creek, a small town nestled in the countryside. The year is 1908, and the house belongs to the Montgomery family. The camera pans slowly across the exterior of the house, capturing its intricate woodwork, the wraparound porch, and the tall windows that seem to watch like vigilant eyes. It's late afternoon, and the golden sunlight casts long shadows across the landscape. Inside, the house is filled with the usual furnishings of a well-to-do family of the period. Heavy oak furniture, ornate wallpaper, oil paintings in gilded frames, and delicate porcelain figurines displayed in glass cabinets. The house has electricity, a luxury for the time, but many oil lamps remain, creating pools of warm light in corners where electric bulbs haven't yet reached. Elizabeth Montgomery, a woman in her early 30s, moves gracefully through the house. Her dark hair is swept up in a Gibson girl style, and she wears a high-necked blouse with a long skirt that brushes the polished wooden floors. She has a quiet dignity about her, but there's a hint of sadness in her eyes, a shadow that hasn't lifted since her husband's passing 3 years ago. She calls up the stairs, her voice gentle but caring. "Catherine, Catherine, dear, it's time for your hair to be brushed." Upstairs, in a bedroom decorated with floral wallpaper and lace curtains, Catherine Montgomery sits on the edge of her bed. She's 8 years old, with long chestnut hair that falls past her waist. She's wearing a white nightgown, and her feet, in woolen socks, dangle above the floor. She looks up from the book she's reading, Anne of Green Gables, a new novel that her mother bought for her birthday. "Coming, Mother," she calls back, closing her book and placing it carefully on her bedside table. Catherine makes her way down the hallway, her steps light on the runner carpet. She passes several closed doors before reaching the master bedroom. The door is slightly ajar, and she pushes it open. Elizabeth is seated at her vanity, a beautiful piece of furniture made of mahogany with an oval mirror. The vanity top is arranged with silver-backed brushes, combs, and glass bottles of perfume. A single electric lamp with a silk shade casts a soft glow over the scene. "There you are," Elizabeth says, turning to smile at her daughter. "Come sit with me. I want to brush your hair before bed." Catherine approaches and sits on the small stool in front of the vanity. In the mirror, she can see both herself and her mother. Elizabeth begins to remove the ribbon from Catherine's hair, her fingers working deftly. "Did you enjoy your book?" Elizabeth asks, picking up a silver-backed brush. "Yes, Mother. Anne is so imaginative. I wish I could visit Prince Edward Island someday." Elizabeth smiles, beginning to draw the brush through her daughter's long hair. "Perhaps we shall when you're a bit older. Your father always wanted to take us traveling." At the mention of her father, Catherine's expression grows solemn. "Do you think Father would be proud of me?" "Oh, my darling, he would be so very proud," Elizabeth says, her voice catching slightly. "You're growing into such a fine young lady." As Elizabeth continues to brush, Catherine stares into the mirror. The lamplight creates strange shadows, and for a moment she thinks she sees something odd, a flicker of movement that doesn't correspond to her mother's actions. She blinks, and everything is normal again. "Mother," Catherine says hesitantly, "do you ever feel as though you're being watched in this house?" Elizabeth's hands pause momentarily before resuming their rhythmic brushing. "Whatever do you mean, dear?" "Sometimes I feel as though there's someone else here, especially at night." "It's just your imagination, Catherine. This old house creaks and groans, but it's only the wood settling." Catherine nods, but her eyes remain troubled as she looks into the mirror. Mrs. Blackwood at church said that mirrors can be doorways to other places. Elizabeth's expression tightens slightly. Mrs. Blackwood fills your head with nonsense. "Mirrors are simply glass with silver backing. There's nothing magical about them." "But what if—" "That's enough, Catherine," Elizabeth says firmly. "Such fanciful thinking isn't appropriate for a young lady." Catherine falls silent, watching as her mother's reflection continues to brush her hair. But then something happens that makes her breath catch in her throat. In the mirror, she sees her mother's hand pause, while the real brush continues moving through her hair. For a split second, the reflection and reality are out of sync. "Mother," she whispers, "did you see that?" "See what, dear?" "In the mirror. Your reflection. It moved differently." Elizabeth glances at the mirror, her expression unreadable. "You're tired, Catherine. Your eyes are playing tricks on you." Before Catherine can protest, there's a knock at the bedroom door. Both turn to see Hannah, their maid, standing in the doorway. Hannah is in her 50s, with gray hair tucked neatly under a cap, and she's been with the family since before Catherine was born. "Pardon the interruption, ma'am," Hannah says, "but there's a telephone call for you. It's Dr. Harmon." Elizabeth's face pales slightly. At this hour? Did he say what it was regarding? No, ma'am, only that it was urgent. Elizabeth nods, setting down the brush. I'll be right there. Catherine, wait here. I'll return shortly to finish your hair. As Elizabeth follows Hannah out of the room, Catherine turns back to the mirror. She studies her reflection, noticing how the lamplight creates deep shadows around her eyes. The house is quiet except for the ticking of the mantel clock and the distant murmur of her mother's voice on the telephone downstairs. Slowly, Catherine reaches for the brush her mother left on the vanity. She brings it to her hair and begins to brush, watching her reflection mimic her movements. 1 stroke, 2 strokes, 3. On the 4th stroke, something changes. In the mirror, Catherine sees a hand that is not her own guiding the brush. It's a woman's hand, but older, with prominent veins and long, slender fingers. Catherine freezes, the real brush held midair, but in the reflection, the brush continues its downward stroke. Catherine can't move, can't breathe, as she watches the impossible happening before her eyes. In the mirror, she can now make out a figure standing behind her, a woman in outdated clothing, her face partially obscured by shadow. The woman's lips curve into a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. Catherine wants to scream, but fear has stolen her voice. She drops the brush, hearing it clatter on the wooden floor. But in the mirror, the brush continues its rhythmic movement through her hair. Suddenly, the spell is broken by her mother's return. Catherine, what's wrong? You look as though you've seen a ghost. Catherine turns to her mother, words tumbling out in a rush. There was someone else in the mirror. A woman brushing my hair, but it wasn't me, and it wasn't you. Elizabeth's face grows stern. Catherine, that's quite enough. I won't have you making up such stories. But mother, I saw her. She was right behind me. Elizabeth picks up the fallen brush and places it firmly on the vanity. This fascination with the supernatural must stop. It's unbecoming and unhealthy. Catherine looks back at the mirror, but everything appears normal now. Just her frightened face and her mother's disapproving expression reflected in the glass. But she knows what she saw. Come, Elizabeth says, her tone softening slightly. It's been a long day and you need your rest. We'll finish your hair in the morning. As Catherine is led from the room, she can't help glancing back at the vanity mirror. For a fraction of a second, she thinks she sees the strange woman again, watching from behind the glass with hungry eyes. That night, Catherine lies awake in her bed, listening to the house's nocturnal symphony, the creaking of timbers, the soft moaning of wind through eaves, the occasional settling sounds that seem to echo from within the walls themselves. Her window is slightly ajar, allowing a cool breeze to flutter the lace curtains. Outside, the moon casts silver light across the garden, creating strange, elongated shadows of the trees and shrubs. She thinks about what she saw in the mirror, trying to convince herself that it was merely a trick of the light, a product of her overtired mind. But the image of those hands, those long, pale-veined hands, remains vivid in her memory. Unable to sleep, Catherine reaches for the small hand mirror on her bedside table. It's a silver-backed piece, a gift from her father on her 6th birthday. Hesitantly, she raises it to look at her reflection in the dim moonlight filtering through the window. At first, she sees only herself, a young girl with frightened eyes and tousled hair. But as she continues to stare, the reflection begins to change subtly. The eyes looking back at her seem to deepen, to age, as though someone else is peering through them from a great distance. Catherine drops the mirror onto her quilt, her heart pounding. She slides out of bed and pads quickly to her bedroom door, intending to seek the comfort of her mother's presence. But as she reaches for the doorknob, she hesitates. Her mother had been so dismissive earlier, so certain that Catherine was merely indulging in childish fantasy. Instead, she turns and crosses to her window, pushing it open wider to feel the cool night air on her face. The town of Willow Creek lies spread out below, a collection of darkened buildings with only a few windows still illuminated at this late hour. In the distance, she can see the church steeple silhouetted against the night sky, and beyond that, the dark mass of woodland that marks the edge of town. As she stands there, a movement in the garden below catches her eye. A figure is moving among the rose bushes, a woman in a long, pale dress that seems to glow in the moonlight. The woman's head is bowed, her face hidden, but there's something familiar about her posture, the way she moves with deliberate grace. Catherine leans forward, straining to see better. The woman in the garden stops beside the stone bird bath and slowly raises her head. Even from this distance, Catherine can feel the woman's gaze fixed upon her window. A chill runs down her spine as the woman lifts a hand in greeting, a hand with long, slender fingers. Gasping, Catherine stumbles backward, nearly tripping over her toy chest. When she gathers the courage to look again, the garden is empty, the roses swaying gently in the night breeze as though no one had been there at all. Morning comes with pale sunlight and the cheerful sounds of birds. Catherine has finally fallen into a fitful sleep just before dawn, and she awakens to the sound of Hannah drawing back her bedroom curtains. "Rise and shine, Miss Catherine," Hannah says, her voice carrying its usual warmth. "Your mother is waiting for you at breakfast." Catherine sits up, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Hannah," she says hesitantly, "do you believe in ghosts?" Hannah's hands pause on the curtain. "Now, what sort of question is that for a bright morning? Please, Hannah, I need to know." The older woman turns, studying Catherine's face. "My grandmother used to say that there are more things in heaven and earth than we can understand. Why do you ask, child?" Catherine tells Hannah about what she saw in the mirror in the garden, watching the maid's face carefully for signs of disbelief. To her surprise, Hannah doesn't dismiss her story. "The old ones believed that mirrors could trap souls," Hannah says quietly, sitting on the edge of Catherine's bed. "My grandmother would always cover the mirrors when someone died, to prevent their spirit from becoming caught. Do you think someone's soul is trapped in our mirrors?" Hannah pats Catherine's hand. "I think that sometimes the veil between worlds grows thin, especially in old houses like this one. But not all spirits mean harm, Miss Catherine. This one frightened me. Fear often comes from not understanding," Hannah says, rising. "Now you'd best get dressed before your mother comes looking for you." As Catherine dresses in a simple blue frock, she contemplates Hannah's words. Could the woman she saw be a spirit? And if so, what did she want? At breakfast, Elizabeth is already seated at the dining table, a cup of tea and the morning newspaper before her. She looks up as Catherine enters, her expression softening into a smile. "Good morning, dear. Did you sleep well?" Catherine takes her seat, avoiding her mother's eyes. "Yes, Mother." It's a lie, but Catherine doesn't want another lecture about her overactive imagination. Instead, she focuses on the bowl of porridge that Hannah places before her, stirring in a spoonful of honey. Elizabeth folds her newspaper, setting it aside. "I've been thinking about what happened last night, Catherine." Catherine looks up, surprised. "You have?" "Yes. I believe I was too harsh with you. Childhood is a time of wonder and imagination, and I shouldn't have dismissed your feelings so abruptly." Relief washes over Catherine. "Then you believe me about what I saw in the mirror?" Elizabeth's smile tightens almost imperceptibly. "I believe that you believe you saw something, and that's what matters. It's not the validation Catherine hoped for, but it's better than outright dismissal." She takes a spoonful of porridge, considering how to proceed. "Mother, Hannah told me that some people cover mirrors when someone dies, to prevent their soul from being trapped." Elizabeth's teacup clatters slightly as she sets it down. "Hannah shouldn't be filling your head with such old wives' tales. But what if it's true? What if Father's soul is—" "That's enough, Catherine," Elizabeth says sharply, then immediately softens her tone. "Your father is at peace. He's not trapped anywhere." Catherine wants to press further, but recognizes the finality in her mother's voice. They finish breakfast in silence, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway marking the passing moments. After breakfast, Elizabeth announces that they will be going into town to visit the dressmaker. Catherine is fitted for a new Sunday dress while Elizabeth discusses fabrics and styles with Mrs. Perkins, the dressmaker. Throughout the fitting, Catherine finds herself drawn to the oval mirror in the corner of the shop, half expecting to see the strange woman reflected in its surface. On their way home, they pass the town cemetery, its wrought iron gates standing open. Catherine tugs at her mother's hand. "Mother, can we visit Father?" Elizabeth hesitates, then nods. For a few minutes, we're expected home for lunch. They walk among the gravestones until they reach the Montgomery family plot. James Montgomery's grave is marked by a marble headstone, simple yet elegant, engraved with his name, dates, and the words, "Beloved husband and father." Catherine kneels beside the grave, arranging the small bunch of wildflowers she picked along the way. Elizabeth stands a few paces back, her face composed, but her eyes reflecting a deep sorrow. "Mother," Catherine says, still looking at the grave, "do you ever feel that Father is still with us? In the house, I mean." Elizabeth is quiet for so long that Catherine thinks she might not answer. When she finally speaks, her voice is barely above a whisper. "Sometimes, In the quiet moments before dawn, I imagine I can feel him beside me. It's as though he never left. Catherine turns to look at her mother, surprised by this admission. Elizabeth's face is turned toward the distant hills, her profile etched against the blue sky. "Then you do believe in spirits," Catherine says. Elizabeth shakes her head. "I believe in memory and love, Catherine. Those are the only things that truly endure beyond death." As they walk home, Catherine mulls over her mother's words. She's not convinced that memory and love are the only explanations for what she saw in the mirror and the garden. There was something too real, too present about the woman with the long, slender fingers. That evening, after dinner, Elizabeth announces that they will resume their nightly ritual of hairbrushing. Catherine follows her mother to the master bedroom with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The vanity mirror seems to gleam in the lamplight, reflecting the room in perfect detail. Too perfect, perhaps, as though eager to prove its innocence. Catherine sits on the stool, watching as her mother removes the ribbon from her hair and begins to brush with long, gentle strokes. In the mirror, everything appears normal. Catherine's reflection moves in perfect synchronization with her actual self, and her mother's hands in the mirror match the rhythmic movements of the real brush through her hair. "You're very quiet tonight," Elizabeth observes. "I'm watching the mirror," Catherine admits. Elizabeth's brush doesn't falter. "And what do you see?" "Just us, just what's really happening." "Of course," Elizabeth says with a small smile. "That's all a mirror can show, reflections of what's real." Catherine isn't so sure, but she doesn't argue. Instead, she closes her eyes, focusing on the soothing sensation of the brush moving through her hair, the gentle pressure of her mother's hand steadying her head. When she opens her eyes again, everything has changed. In the mirror, it's not her mother standing behind her, but the strange woman with the long veined hands. The woman is brushing Catherine's hair with slow, deliberate strokes, her lips curved in that same unsettling smile that doesn't reach her eyes. Catherine gasps, jerking away from her mother's touch. "She's there. She's in the mirror right now." Elizabeth looks alarmed, her gaze darting to the mirror. "Catherine, there's no one there. It's just you and me." "No, look." Catherine points frantically at the mirror. "She's standing right where you are, but it's not you." In the mirror, the strange woman's smile widens, revealing teeth that seem too sharp, too numerous. She continues to brush the reflection of Catherine's hair, even though the real Catherine has moved away from her mother. Elizabeth grasps Catherine by the shoulders, turning her away from the mirror. "Catherine, you must calm yourself. There is nothing in that mirror except our reflections." "But I saw her," Catherine insists, tears streaming down her face. "Why won't you believe me?" Elizabeth pulls Catherine into a tight embrace, stroking her hair. "Oh, my darling, I do believe that you're upset, but mirrors cannot show things that aren't there." Over her mother's shoulder, Catherine can still see the vanity mirror. The strange woman is no longer visible, but Catherine is certain she wasn't imagining things. The fear and certainty must show on her face because Elizabeth's expression changes to one of concern and determination. "Perhaps," Elizabeth says slowly, "it would be best if we covered the mirrors for a while, just until these impressions fade from your mind." Catherine nods eagerly. "Yes, please. Can we cover them all? If it will help you feel safe, then yes, we can cover them all." And so, that evening, Elizabeth and Hannah moved through the house, draping sheets over every mirror. The large gilt-framed mirror in the entry hall, the vanity mirror in Elizabeth's bedroom, the small hand mirror in Catherine's room, even the modest mirror in the bathroom. All are hidden beneath white cotton sheets that flutter slightly in the breeze from open windows. As Hannah covers the last mirror, a small one in the hallway, she glances at Catherine. "My grandmother would approve," she says with a wink. That night, Catherine sleeps more soundly than she has in days. The house seems quieter somehow, as though the covered mirrors have muffled more than just reflections. When she wakes the next morning, sunlight is streaming through her window, creating patterns on her bedroom floor. She goes downstairs to find her mother already at breakfast, looking surprisingly refreshed. Elizabeth smiles as Catherine enters the dining room. "You slept well, I see. No nightmares?" Catherine shakes her head, taking her seat. "No nightmares." "Excellent. I've been thinking, Catherine, perhaps we should take a holiday. Visit your Aunt Margaret in Boston for a few weeks." Catherine brightens at this suggestion. She adores her aunt, who tells wonderful stories and always has interesting books for Catherine to read. "Could we really go?" "I don't see why not. A change of scenery might do us both good." Hannah enters with a fresh pot of tea, her expression unreadable as she pours for Elizabeth. "Will you be wanting me to prepare the house for your absence, ma'am?" "Yes, Hannah. We'll leave at the end of the week. You may take your own holiday while we're gone, if you wish." Hannah nods, but Catherine notices a slight frown creasing the maid's forehead. "Very good, ma'am." After breakfast, Catherine goes to the garden to read. It's a beautiful day, with a clear blue sky and just enough breeze to rustle the leaves of the old oak tree. She settles on a wrought iron bench beside the rose bushes, opening her book but finding it difficult to concentrate. Her thoughts keep returning to the covered mirrors inside the house and the strange woman she saw in the reflection. She's startled from her reverie by the arrival of Mrs. Blackwood, who lives in the large house across the street. Mrs. Blackwood is a widow in her 60s, known for her involvement in church activities and her tendency to spread gossip about the town's residents. "Good morning, Catherine," Mrs. Blackwood calls, approaching the garden gate. "Is your mother at home?" Catherine stands, marking her place in her book. "Yes, Mrs. Blackwood, she's inside. Shall I fetch her for you?" "That would be most kind, dear." As Catherine turns to go inside, Mrs. Blackwood calls after her. "I couldn't help but notice that your windows seem to be covered. Is there spring cleaning happening?" Catherine hesitates, unsure how to respond. "Not exactly. Mother thought it best to cover the mirrors for a while." Mrs. Blackwood's expression changes, her eyes widening slightly. "The mirrors? All of them?" "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Blackwood takes a step closer to the gate, lowering her voice. "Catherine, has something happened in your house? Something unusual?" The intensity of Mrs. Blackwood's gaze makes Catherine uncomfortable. "I should get Mother," she says, turning and hurrying toward the house. Inside, she finds Elizabeth in the sitting room, writing letters. "Mother, Mrs. Blackwood is here to see you." Elizabeth looks up, her pen pausing above the paper. "Mrs. Blackwood, did she say what she wanted?" "No, but she asked about the covered mirrors." A shadow passes over Elizabeth's face. "I see. Well, show her in, and then you may continue your reading in the study." Catherine does as she's told, escorting Mrs. Blackwood to the sitting room before retreating to the study. But instead of resuming her book, she positions herself near the study door, which is slightly ajar, allowing her to hear the conversation in the sitting room. "Elizabeth, my dear," Mrs. Blackwood's voice comes through clearly. "I was concerned when Catherine mentioned that you've covered all the mirrors in the house." "It's nothing to be concerned about," Elizabeth replies, her tone polite but reserved. "Catherine has been having nightmares, and I thought it might help." "Nightmares about mirrors?" There's a pause before Elizabeth answers. "In a manner of speaking, yes." "Elizabeth," Mrs. Blackwood's voice drops lower, forcing Catherine to strain to hear. "You know the history of this house as well as I do. If Catherine is seeing things in the mirrors, you must take it seriously." "I don't know what you're implying, Mrs. Blackwood, but I assure you that Catherine is simply a child with an active imagination." "Is she seeing Lillian Hargrove?" The name sends a chill through Catherine, though she's certain she's never heard it before. There's a long silence from the sitting room. "I don't know who that is," Elizabeth finally says, her voice tight. "I think you do," Mrs. Blackwood insists. "Lillian Hargrove lived in this house before you and James bought it. She was found dead in front of her vanity mirror, a brush still clutched in her hand. They say she was obsessed with her appearance, brushing her hair 100 times each night. Some in town whispered that she made a pact with dark forces to preserve her beauty. "That's nothing but superstitious nonsense," Elizabeth says firmly. "And I'll thank you not to share such stories with Catherine." "The mirrors, Elizabeth. Why cover them if you're not afraid of what might be looking back?" "I think it's time for you to leave, Mrs. Blackwood. Catherine and I are preparing for a trip to Boston, and there's much to be done." Catherine can hear the rustle of fabric as the women stand. She quickly retreats from the door, her mind racing with what she's just heard. Lillian Hargrove. Could she be the woman in the mirror? After Mrs. Blackwood departs, Catherine remains in the study, pretending to read when Elizabeth checks on her. But her thoughts are elsewhere, piecing together fragments of information. The strange woman in the mirror with her long, slender fingers, the figure in the garden, and now this name, Lillian Hargrove. That afternoon, while her mother is occupied with travel arrangements, Catherine slips out of the house and makes her way to the town library. The librarian, Miss Peabody, is a stern woman with spectacles perched on the end of her nose, but she softens when Catherine approaches her desk. "Good afternoon, Miss Montgomery. What can I help you find today?" Catherine hesitates, then asks, "Do you have any information about a woman named Lillian Hargrove? She used to live in our house." Miss Peabody's expression changes, becoming guarded. That's an unusual request for a young girl. Why do you want to know about her? It's for a school project. Catherine lies, hating the deception but desperate for information. About local history. Miss Peabody studies her for a moment, then nods. Wait here. She disappears into the stacks and returns several minutes later with a bound volume of the Willow Creek Gazette from 1888. There's an article about her in here, Miss Peabody says, placing the heavy book on a reading table. Page 42. Catherine thanks her and sits down to read. The article is brief but informative. Lillian Hargrove, aged 35, was found dead in her home on Maple Street, now Catherine's home, on June 12, 1888. The cause of death was listed as heart failure, but the article notes that she was discovered seated at her vanity, a silver-backed brush in her hand. The piece mentions that she was known for her beauty and had never married, preferring to live alone despite numerous suitors. A smaller article on the following page catches Catherine's attention. It details the auction of Lillian Hargrove's possessions following her death. Most items were purchased by various townspeople, but her vanity and mirror were bought by a Dr. Thomas Montgomery, who had recently moved to Willow Creek with his young wife. Catherine stares at the name, her heart pounding. Dr. Thomas Montgomery, her grandfather. The vanity in her mother's bedroom, the one where she first saw the strange woman, had belonged to Lillian Hargrove. She continues searching through the library's archives, finding a few more mentions of Lillian Hargrove in social notices. One article from 1885 describes her as the belle of the Founder's Day Ball, her beauty enhanced by her luxurious dark hair, which she is known to brush 100 times each night. Another piece, dated just a month before her death, mentions that she had become increasingly reclusive, refusing visitors and only being seen at church on Sundays, where she appeared pale and distracted, her once luminous beauty dimmed by some unknown affliction. By the time Catherine leaves the library, the sun is beginning to set. She hurries home, her mind swirling with questions. Why hadn't her mother told her about Lillian Hargrove? Did she know that the vanity had belonged to her? And most importantly, was Lillian the woman Catherine had seen in the mirror? When she arrives home, Catherine finds the house in a state of organized chaos. Hannah is moving between rooms with linens and clothing, preparing for their trip to Boston. Elizabeth is in the study, making lists and writing more letters. "Catherine, where have you been?" Elizabeth asks, looking up from her desk. "I was beginning to worry." "At the library," Catherine says truthfully. "I wanted to get some books for our journey." Elizabeth nods, accepting this explanation. "Dinner will be ready soon. Go wash up, please." Catherine starts to leave, but then turns back. "Mother, who was Lillian Hargrove?" Elizabeth's pen stills, ink blooming into a dark stain on the paper beneath. When she looks up, her face is carefully composed. "Where did you hear that name?" "Mrs. Blackwood mentioned it. She said Lillian Hargrove lived in our house before us." Elizabeth sets down her pen and stands, crossing to where Catherine stands in the doorway. She places her hands on Catherine's shoulders, looking directly into her eyes. "Catherine, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Lillian Hargrove was a troubled woman who lived here many years ago. The stories about her death have been exaggerated by people like Mrs. Blackwood who enjoy spreading gossip. There is nothing supernatural about her or this house. But the vanity in your room, it was hers, wasn't it? Grandfather bought it at an auction after she died." Elizabeth's fingers tighten slightly on Catherine's shoulders. "How do you know that?" "I read it in an old newspaper at the library." Elizabeth sighs, releasing Catherine. "Yes, the vanity belonged to her. Your grandfather was a doctor who treated her before her death. He bought it because it was finely crafted, nothing more." "What was wrong with her?" "The newspaper said she died of heart failure, but that's enough questions for tonight," Elizabeth interrupts. "We have a busy day tomorrow preparing for our trip. Go wash up for dinner now." Catherine knows she won't get any more information from her mother tonight. She goes upstairs to her room, passing the covered mirrors in the hallway. The sheets look ghostly in the fading light, like shrouded figures watching her passage. In her room, Catherine is drawn to the window that overlooks the garden. The sun has set, and the garden is bathed in the silvery light of the rising moon. The roses sway gently in the evening breeze, their pale blooms like faces turned toward the house. As she watches, a movement catches her eye, a figure in white moving among the roses. Catherine presses closer to the glass, her breath fogging the pain. The figure stops beside the birdbath and looks up toward Catherine's window, just as before. It's the woman from the mirror, her long dark hair loose around her shoulders, her pale face a blank oval in the moonlight. Catherine doesn't run away this time. Instead, she stares back, trying to make out the woman's features. As if sensing her scrutiny, the woman raises a hand in that same greeting gesture, her long fingers extended toward Catherine. Without thinking, Catherine raises her own hand in response. The moment she does, the woman in the garden begins to move toward the house, her white dress floating around her as though she's gliding rather than walking. Panic rises in Catherine's throat. She backs away from the window, her heart pounding. She can hear Hannah moving about in the hallway, preparing the bedrooms for the night. "Hannah!" she calls, her voice tight with fear. Hannah appears in the doorway moments later, a concerned expression on her lined face. "What is it, Miss Catherine?" "There's someone in the garden," Catherine says, pointing to the window. "A woman in white." Hannah crosses to the window and looks out, her expression revealing nothing. "I don't see anyone, miss." Catherine joins her at the window, but the garden is empty now, the roses standing still in the windless night. "She was there, Hannah. The same woman I saw in the mirror, I think." I think it might be Lillian Hargrove." Hannah's face pales. "You know that name?" "I found out about her today. She lived in this house, and she died at her vanity. The same vanity that's in Mother's room now." Hannah sits heavily on the edge of Catherine's bed. "Miss Catherine, there are things about this house that aren't spoken of. Your mother would be very upset if she knew I was telling you this, but I believe you have a right to know." Catherine sits beside Hannah, her eyes wide. "Tell me, please." "Lillian Hargrove was a beautiful woman but vain. They say she made a bargain with dark forces to preserve her youth and beauty. The price was her soul, which would be claimed upon her death. But Lillian was clever. She found a way to cheat the bargain." "How?" "Mirrors," Hannah says simply. She believed that if she could trap her soul in a mirror at the moment of death, she could escape the dark forces and continue to exist in the world of reflections. Did it work? Hannah shakes her head. "No one knows for certain, but there have been incidents over the years. People claiming to see a woman in mirrors who doesn't match any real person in the room. Your grandfather bought her vanity because he was a man of science who didn't believe in such superstitions. But your grandmother insisted on keeping the mirror covered at all times." Catherine thinks about this, her mind racing. If her soul is trapped in the mirror, what does she want? Why is she showing herself to me? Hannah looks troubled. "I cannot say, miss. But if you're seeing her, both in the mirror and in the garden, it means she's growing stronger. The veil between her world and ours is thinning. Is that why Mother decided we should go to Boston? Your mother doesn't believe in such things. But yes, I think she wants to get you away from this house and its influences." A thought occurs to Catherine. "Hannah, if Lillian's soul is in the mirror, does that mean she can come out? Into our world?" Hannah stands abruptly. "That's enough stories for tonight, Miss Catherine. Your mother would be most displeased if she heard me filling your head with such notions." "But Hannah..." "To bed now, miss. You have a busy day tomorrow." Hannah leaves, closing the door firmly behind her. Catherine remains seated on her bed, contemplating what she's learned. If Lillian Hargrove's soul is indeed trapped in the mirrors of the house, what does she want with Catherine? And why is she appearing now, 20 years after her death? Unable to sleep, Catherine takes out her journal and begins to write down everything she knows about Lillian Hargrove. As she writes, a plan begins to form in her mind. If they're leaving for Boston in 2 days, she has limited time to understand what's happening and perhaps help Lillian find peace. The next morning, Catherine wakes early and goes downstairs to find Hannah preparing breakfast. Her mother is not yet up, giving Catherine the opportunity she's been waiting for. "Hannah," she says quietly, "I need to ask you something important. Do you know where Lillian Hargrove is buried?" Hannah pauses in her work, giving Catherine a sharp look. "Why would you want to know such a thing?" "I thought perhaps if I visited her grave I might understand better what she wants." Hannah sighs, wiping her hands on her apron. "She's buried in the old section of the cemetery beneath a willow tree. Her headstone has an angel on it. But Miss Catherine, I must strongly advise against visiting. Some things are best left undisturbed." "I just want to understand," Catherine insists. "If her soul is trapped and unhappy, maybe there's a way to help her." Hannah's expression softens. "You have a kind heart, miss, but be careful. The dead have their own ways, and they don't always align with the ways of the living." After breakfast, Catherine tells her mother she's going to visit her father's grave to say goodbye before they leave for Boston. Elizabeth offers to accompany her, but Catherine persuades her that she'd like some time alone with her father. Reluctantly, Elizabeth agrees, making Catherine promise to be back by lunchtime. At the cemetery, Catherine first visits her father's grave, placing a small bouquet of flowers she's brought from the garden. Then, she makes her way to the old section, searching among the weathered headstones for Lillian Hargrove's final resting place. She finds it beneath a massive willow tree, just as Hannah described. The headstone is marble, similar to her father's but older, with an angel carved at the top, its wings spread as though in flight. The inscription reads, Lillian Hargrove, 1853-1888. Beauty perishes, but the soul endures. Catherine kneels beside the grave, unsure what she expected to find or feel here. The ground is covered with fallen leaves, and the headstone is spotted with lichen. It doesn't seem like anyone has visited in a very long time. I know you're in our mirrors, Catherine says softly, feeling slightly foolish for talking to a gravestone. I don't know what you want, but I'm not afraid of you anymore. If you need help, you can tell me. The only response is the rustling of the willow branches overhead and the distant call of a crow. Catherine sits in silence for several minutes, waiting for something, a sign, a feeling, anything that might indicate Lillian Hargrove has heard her. As she's about to leave, she notices something partially buried in the leaves near the headstone. Brushing the leaves aside, she uncovers a tarnished silver hand mirror. Its back engraved with intricate flowers and the initials LH. Catherine's heart races as she picks up the mirror. It must have been left here by someone who knew Lillian, perhaps many years ago. The mirror's surface is clouded with age, but as Catherine wipes it with her handkerchief, the glass begins to clear. For a moment, she sees only her own reflection, a young girl with wide, serious eyes and long chestnut hair. But then the reflection changes, rippling like water disturbed by a stone. The face looking back at her is no longer her own, but that of a beautiful woman with dark hair and pale skin. Lillian Hargrove. Catherine gasps, but doesn't drop the mirror. Lillian's reflection seems to be trying to speak, her lips moving silently. Catherine leans closer, straining to understand. What do you want? Catherine whispers. Why are you showing yourself to me? The reflection mouths words that Catherine can't decipher. Frustrated, she holds the mirror closer. I can't understand you. Suddenly, the reflection changes again. Instead of Lillian's face, Catherine sees an image of her mother's bedroom, focusing on the vanity mirror. The vision zooms in on the mirror, showing something hidden behind it, a small, dark object tucked into the frame. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the vision fades, and Catherine is looking at her own reflection again. She stares at the mirror for several more minutes, but nothing else happens. Taking the hand mirror with her, Catherine leaves the cemetery and heads home, her mind filled with questions. What had Lillian been trying to show her? What was hidden behind the vanity mirror? When she reaches home, she finds her mother and Hannah busy with preparations for their trip. Elizabeth is in the study, writing final instructions for the caretaker who will check on the house while they're away. Hannah is packing trunks with their clothing and necessities for the journey. Catherine slips upstairs unnoticed, the hand mirror hidden in the folds of her dress. In her room, she carefully wraps the mirror in a scarf and hides it in her trunk, which Hannah has already begun packing for the trip. Throughout the day, Catherine tries to find an opportunity to examine the vanity in her mother's room, but Elizabeth is frequently present, and when she isn't, Hannah is moving between rooms with linens and clothing. Catherine knows she must wait for the right moment. That night after dinner, Elizabeth announces that they should all retire early. We have a long day tomorrow, finalizing our preparations. The train to Boston leaves at noon the day after. Catherine goes to her room obediently, but doesn't prepare for bed. Instead, she sits by her window, watching as the house gradually grows quiet. The lights in her mother's room go out, and soon after, she hears Hannah's footsteps as the maid retires to her own quarters in the attic. Catherine waits another hour, listening to the house's nighttime sounds, the settling of timbers, the ticking of clocks, the occasional creak of floorboards. When she's certain everyone is asleep, she slips from her room and makes her way quietly down the hallway to her mother's bedroom. The door opens with a soft creak, revealing the room bathed in moonlight. The vanity stands against the far wall, its mirror still covered with a white sheet. Catherine approaches it cautiously, her heart pounding so loudly she fears it might wake her mother, who is sleeping peacefully in the large four-poster bed. With trembling hands, Catherine removes the sheet from the mirror. In the moonlight, the glass appears almost liquid, its surface rippling slightly as though disturbed by an unseen current. Catherine stares at her reflection, half expecting to see Lillian Hargrove looking back at her, but the mirror shows only herself and the dimly lit room behind her. Remembering the vision from the hand mirror, Catherine examines the frame of the vanity mirror. It's ornately carved mahogany with flowers and vines twining around the edges. At first she sees nothing unusual, but as she runs her fingers along the back of the frame, she feels a small gap, a space where something might be hidden. Carefully, she reaches into the gap and feels something solid, a small, flat object. She pulls it out and finds herself holding a miniature portrait in an oval frame. The portrait is of a woman, undoubtedly Lillian Hargrove. She's beautiful, with dark hair arranged in an elaborate style, high cheekbones and large, luminous eyes. But there's something unsettling about her expression, a hunger in her gaze that makes Catherine shiver. As she holds the portrait, Catherine notices writing on the back. In flowing script, someone has written, "The mirror holds more than reflections. Beware the 100th stroke." Catherine stares at the message, trying to understand its meaning. The 100th stroke. Was that a reference to the 100 brush strokes Lillian was said to perform each night? And what did the mirror hold beyond reflections? Lost in thought, Catherine doesn't notice the change in the vanity mirror until it's too late. The surface has darkened, no longer reflecting the moonlit room, but showing a different scene entirely. Lillian Hargrove seated at this very vanity, brushing her hair with long, deliberate strokes. As Catherine watches, transfixed, Lillian turns her head slightly, looking directly at Catherine with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. Catherine wants to run, to call for her mother, but she's frozen in place. In the mirror, Lillian stands and approaches the glass, pressing her hands against it from the inside, her long fingers splayed. Her lips move, forming words that Catherine can now understand. "Let me out." The glass of the mirror begins to ripple more violently, bulging outward as though something is pushing from within. Catherine takes a step backward, clutching the miniature portrait to her chest. She feels a rush of cold air, and the candle on the bedside table flickers wildly. In the mirror, Lillian's expression changes from pleading to anger. Her features contort, becoming almost inhuman as she pounds against the glass. Cracks begin to appear at the edges of the mirror, spreading inward like a web. "Catherine?" Elizabeth's voice, thick with sleep, comes from the bed. "Is that you?" The sound of her mother's voice breaks the spell. Catherine turns, dropping the portrait in her haste. "Mother!" The mirror. She's trying to get out. Elizabeth sits up, reaching for the lamp beside her bed. "What are you talking about? Who's trying to get out?" "Lillian Hargrove. She's in the mirror, and she wants to come through." Elizabeth lights the lamp, casting a warm glow across the room. "Catherine, you're having another nightmare. There's no one in the mirror." Catherine points frantically at the vanity. "Look, can't you see the cracks in the glass? She was pounding on it, trying to break through." Elizabeth rises from the bed, wrapping her dressing gown around her as she approaches the vanity. She examines the mirror, which now appears perfectly normal, reflecting only the room and its occupants. "There are no cracks, Catherine. The glass is intact." Elizabeth's voice is gentle but firm. "You were dreaming while awake, that's all." "No, I saw her, and I found this." Catherine stops, realizing she's dropped the miniature portrait. She looks around frantically but can't see it anywhere. "Found what, dear?" "A portrait of Lillian. It was hidden behind the mirror frame, and there was a message about the 100th stroke." Elizabeth places her hands on Catherine's shoulders, looking into her eyes with concern. "Catherine, listen to me. There is no portrait, no message. Lillian Hargrove has been dead for 20 years. She is not in our mirrors." "But I saw her, and Hannah told me." "Hannah has been filling your head with nonsense," Elizabeth says, her voice hardening. "I've spoken to her about this before." As if summoned by her name, Hannah appears in the doorway, her gray hair loose around her shoulders. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" "No, Hannah, everything is not all right," Elizabeth says sharply. "Catherine is having delusions about Lillian Hargrove trying to break through the mirror, and she mentions that you've been telling her stories. After I expressly forbade it." Hannah's face pales. "I only told her what she already knew, ma'am. She had learned about Miss Hargrove from Mrs. Blackwood and the library. And you should have discouraged her interest, not fed it with superstitious nonsense." Catherine looks between her mother and Hannah, confusion mingling with her fear. "But Hannah only told me what everyone in town seems to know. Why have you kept it a secret from me, Mother?" Elizabeth sighs, the anger draining from her expression. "Because I wanted to protect you from exactly this kind of fear. Lillian Hargrove was a disturbed woman who died tragically. But she is not haunting our mirrors, Catherine. She is not trying to reach you." "Then why did you agree to cover the mirrors when I told you what I saw?" "Because I thought it would calm your fears, not encourage them." Elizabeth turns to Hannah. Please take Catherine back to her room and stay with her until she falls asleep. We'll discuss your employment with this household tomorrow. Hannah nods, her expression resigned. Yes, ma'am. Come, Miss Catherine. Catherine allows Hannah to lead her from the room, glancing back once at the vanity mirror. For a split second, she thinks she sees Lillian's face reflected in the glass, watching her with those hungry eyes. In her room, Catherine sits on the edge of her bed, still trembling from her encounter. Hannah moves about, lighting a lamp and turning down the bed covers. Hannah, Catherine whispers, I saw her. I really did. And I found a portrait behind the mirror frame with a warning about the 100th stroke. Hannah sits beside Catherine, taking her hand. I believe you, Miss Catherine. But your mother, she has her reasons for denying these things. What reasons? Why doesn't she believe me? Hannah hesitates, then speaks in a low voice. Your mother had her own encounter with Lillian Hargrove many years ago, before you were born. She was staying with your grandparents when she was about your age, and she claimed to see a woman in the vanity mirror, a woman who was not reflected in the room. Catherine's eyes widen. What happened? Your grandmother believed her and covered all the mirrors in the house, but your grandfather was a man of science who had no patience for superstition. He uncovered the mirrors and told your mother that she was simply overtired and imagining things, just like Mother is telling me now. Hannah nods. The experience frightened your mother deeply. I think she decided then that she would never believe in such things again. It was easier to deny than to face the fear. Catherine thinks about this, about her mother's firm insistence that there is nothing supernatural in the house. But if she had the same experience, why doesn't she believe me? Sometimes, Miss Catherine, the things that frighten us most are the things we refuse to acknowledge. Hannah pats Catherine's hand. Now, you should try to sleep. Tomorrow is your last day before the journey to Boston. I don't think I can sleep, Hannah. Not after what I saw. Hannah considers this, then nods. Wait here. She leaves the room and returns a few minutes later with a small bottle. This is lavender oil. It has calming properties. She places a few drops on Catherine's pillow. Lie down and breathe deeply. It will help you sleep. Catherine obediently lies down, inhaling the soothing scent of lavender. Hannah sits in the chair beside the bed, humming softly, an old lullaby that Catherine remembers from her earliest childhood. Despite her fear and confusion, Catherine's eyelids begin to grow heavy. The last thing she sees before sleep claims her is Hannah's weathered face, watching over her with a mixture of concern and determination. Morning brings pale sunlight and the distant sound of birdsong. Catherine wakes to find Hannah still in the chair beside her bed, dozing. The events of the previous night come rushing back, and Catherine sits up abruptly, waking Hannah. Good morning, Miss Catherine, Hannah says, straightening in her chair. Did you sleep well? Yes, surprisingly, Catherine admits. Hannah, what's going to happen today? Mother was very angry with you last night. Hannah's expression is somber. I've been with your family for many years, miss. I doubt your mother will dismiss me over this matter, but I must be more careful about what I say. Catherine nods, then remembers something. Hannah, the portrait I found. It had a message about the 100th stroke. What do you think it means? Hannah looks troubled. There was an old belief that brushing one's hair 100 times each night would bring beauty and long life. Lillian Hargrove was said to be obsessive about this ritual. Perhaps the message refers to that. But it said, beware the 100th stroke, as though something happens at that moment. I cannot say, miss. But if I were you, I would be careful around mirrors, especially when brushing your hair. This warning sends a chill through Catherine. Do you think Lillian is trying to harm me? Hannah stands, smoothing her apron. I think that souls trapped between worlds can become desperate for release, and desperation can lead to dangerous actions. Before Catherine can ask more questions, there's a knock at the door. Elizabeth enters, already dressed for the day. Her expression is composed, but there are shadows beneath her eyes suggesting a restless night. Good morning, Catherine. Hannah, please prepare breakfast. Catherine and I need to speak privately. Hannah nods and leaves the room, closing the door behind her. Elizabeth sits on the edge of Catherine's bed, taking her daughter's hands in her own. Catherine, I owe you an apology. I should have been more understanding about your fears. Catherine looks at her mother in surprise. You believe me now? I believe that you believe what you saw, and that's enough for me to take it seriously. Elizabeth takes a deep breath. Hannah has been with our family since before you were born. She was my nanny when I was a child, and she's always been superstitious, but she's loyal and loving, and I won't dismiss her. Hannah told me that you saw Lillian Hargrove too, when you were my age. Elizabeth's hands tighten around Catherine's. Did she? Well, yes, I had an experience. When I was staying with my parents, I saw something in the vanity mirror that frightened me deeply. What did you see? A woman brushing her hair. A woman who wasn't there in the room with me. Elizabeth's voice is barely above a whisper. For years afterward, I refused to look in mirrors at night. I would cover the mirror in my bedroom before sunset and uncover it only after sunrise. Then you do believe in Lillian's ghost? Elizabeth hesitates. I believe that there are things in this world that we don't fully understand. Whether it's Lillian's ghost or something else entirely, I can't say. But I do know that the fear is real, and I shouldn't have dismissed yours. Catherine feels a rush of relief. Her mother believes her, at least in part. What should we do? We'll continue with our plan to visit Aunt Margaret in Boston. Some time away from this house will do us both good. And when we return, well, perhaps it's time to consider finding a new home. The idea of leaving the only home she's ever known gives Catherine mixed feelings, but the thought of escaping Lillian Hargrove's influence is undeniably appealing. Now, Elizabeth says, rising from the bed, get dressed and come down for breakfast. We have much to do today before our departure tomorrow. The day passes in a flurry of activity. Final preparations are made for their journey. Trunks are packed, arrangements confirmed, last-minute errands run in town. Throughout it all, Catherine is aware of a subtle change in the house's atmosphere. The covered mirrors seem to pulse with a contained energy, as though something behind them is growing impatient. That evening, after dinner, Elizabeth suggests that they have one last hair-brushing session before bed. For old time's sake, she says with a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. Catherine hesitates, remembering Hannah's warning about the 100th stroke, but she doesn't want to upset her mother, especially now that they've reached a new understanding. So she nods and follows Elizabeth upstairs to the master bedroom. The vanity mirror is still covered with its white sheet, standing like a shrouded sentinel against the wall. Elizabeth lights the lamps, casting a warm glow throughout the room. She gestures for Catherine to sit on the stool before the vanity. We don't need to uncover the mirror, Elizabeth says, noticing Catherine's nervous glance at the covered glass. I can brush your hair just as well without it. Catherine sits, feeling her mother's gentle hands removing the ribbon from her hair. Elizabeth begins to brush, her strokes even and methodical. Catherine closes her eyes, trying to focus on the soothing sensation rather than the unsettling presence she feels emanating from behind the sheet. 1, 2, 3. Elizabeth counts the brush strokes aloud, her voice soft and rhythmic. 4, 5, 6. Catherine tries to relax, but a growing sense of unease makes it impossible. Something is wrong. The air in the room feels charged, as though a storm is brewing indoors. The sheet covering the mirror has begun to stir, though there is no breeze. Mother, Catherine says, her voice tight with fear. Something's happening. Elizabeth continues brushing, her voice never faltering as she counts. 15, 16, 17. Mother, please stop. I'm frightened. There's nothing to be afraid of, Catherine. It's just your hair being brushed. 21, 22. The sheet over the mirror is moving more noticeably now, rippling as though something behind it is pushing against the fabric. A low humming sound fills the room, like the distant buzzing of 1,000 bees. Mother, the mirror. Look at the mirror. Elizabeth's hand never falters, the brush continuing its steady rhythm through Catherine's hair. 36, 37. Catherine tries to stand, to move away from the vanity, but finds herself unable to rise from the stool. It's as though invisible hands are holding her in place. Panic rises in her throat. Mother, please. Something's wrong. I can't move. Elizabeth's reflection in the window across the room shows her face contorted in an expression Catherine has never seen before. A mixture of determination and fear. 58, 59. The humming grows louder, and the sheet covering the mirror begins to glow with an unearthly light. Catherine can see the outline of a figure behind the fabric, pressing against it as though trying to push through a membrane between worlds. Mother, stop, Catherine cries, tears streaming down her face. Whatever you're doing, please stop. 73, 74. Elizabeth's voice has changed, becoming deeper, resonating with a power that seems to vibrate through the room. It must be completed, Catherine. The ritual must be fulfilled. With horror, Catherine realizes that her mother's voice has taken on the same quality she heard in her nightmares, the voice of Lillian Hargrove. She tries again to stand, to turn, to see her mother's face, but the invisible force holds her immobile. 89, 90. The brushstrokes have become harder, almost painful against Catherine's scalp. The sheet over the mirror is now fully illuminated, the figure behind it pressing so hard that Catherine can make out the details of a face. Lillian's face, her eyes wide and hungry, her mouth open in a silent scream. 98, 99. With a supreme effort of will, Catherine manages to twist her head just enough to see her mother. What she sees makes her blood run cold. Elizabeth's eyes are vacant, unseeing, her expression blank as she continues to brush and count. It's as though she's in a trance, possessed by some force beyond her control. "Mother!" Catherine screams. "Wake up! It's not you! It's her! It's Lillian!" For a moment, Elizabeth's expression flickers, a hint of awareness returning to her eyes. The brush pauses, hovering in the air for one heartbeat, two, then a voice that is not Elizabeth's speaks through her lips. 100. The brush completes its final stroke and several things happen simultaneously. The sheet covering the mirror tears down the middle as though slashed by invisible claws. The mirror beneath glows with an intense white light that floods the room, momentarily blinding Catherine, and Elizabeth collapses to the floor, the brush falling from her limp fingers. When Catherine can see again, she looks first to her mother, who lies unconscious on the carpet. Then, with dread, she turns to the mirror. The glass is no longer reflective. Instead, it shows a scene like a window into another world, a distorted version of the bedroom, bathed in a strange bluish light. And standing in that other world, looking out at Catherine, is Lillian Hargrove. She is both beautiful and terrible, her face a perfect oval framed by luxurious dark hair, her eyes deep pools of hunger and desperation. She presses her hands against the glass from her side, and Catherine can see that her fingers are unnaturally long, the nails curved like talons. "At last," Lillian says, her voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The 100th stroke is complete. The way is open. "What have you done to my mother?" Catherine demands, finding that she can move again now that the ritual is complete. "She is merely sleeping," Lillian says, her lips curving in a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "She has served her purpose, as you will serve yours. What do you want from me?" "Freedom," Lillian says simply. "For 20 years I have been trapped in the world of reflections, neither living nor dead. Your mother was not strong enough to complete the ritual when she was your age. But you, Catherine, you have the strength I need." "What ritual? What are you talking about?" Lillian's expression grows impatient. "The exchange. A soul for a soul. I require a vessel to return to the world of the living, and you shall take my place in the world of reflections." Horror washes over Catherine as she understands Lillian's intention. "No, I won't let you take my body. You have no choice, child. The ritual has begun, and it must be completed." Lillian presses harder against the glass, which begins to bulge outward, distorting like a bubble about to burst. "Your mother has prepared the way with the 100 strokes. Now you need only reach out and touch the mirror." "I won't do it," Catherine says, backing away. "I'll break the mirror first." Lillian laughs, the sound like breaking glass. "Break it, and your mother's soul will be lost forever. She is halfway between worlds now, held in suspension. Only the completion of the ritual will return her safely to her body." Catherine looks at her mother's still form on the floor, torn between fear for herself and concern for Elizabeth. "You're lying. You just want to trick me into touching the mirror." "Am I lying?" Lillian's voice takes on a sing-song quality. "Look at your mother, Catherine. See how she grows pale? Her breathing slows? Her soul is slipping away minute by minute. Soon it will be too late." Catherine kneels beside her mother, taking her hand. Elizabeth's skin is indeed growing cold, her breathing shallow and irregular. "Mother, mother, can you hear me?" There is no response. Elizabeth's face is ashen, her lips beginning to take on a bluish tinge. "You see," Lillian says, "time is running out. Touch the mirror, Catherine. Save your mother." Tears streaming down her face, Catherine rises and approaches the mirror. Lillian watches her with triumph in her eyes, her hands still pressed against the glass, ready for the moment of exchange. But as Catherine reaches out, her fingers inches from the distorted surface. The bedroom door bursts open. Hannah stands in the doorway, her eyes wide with horror as she takes in the scene. Elizabeth unconscious on the floor, Catherine about to touch the glowing mirror, Lillian's face watching hungrily from within the glass. No, Miss Catherine, Hannah cries. Don't touch the mirror. It's a trick. Catherine hesitates, her hand suspended in midair. But Mother is dying, Hannah. Lillian says I have to complete the ritual to save her. Hannah rushes forward, pulling Catherine away from the mirror. She lies. Your mother is under a spell, not dying. Lillian wants to steal your body and trap your soul. From within the mirror, Lillian's expression contorts with rage. The maid speaks falsely. Touch the mirror, Catherine, or watch your mother die. Hannah kneels beside Elizabeth, placing a hand on her forehead. She begins to murmur words in a language Catherine doesn't recognize, something ancient and powerful. Elizabeth's breathing steadies slightly, some color returning to her cheeks. You see, Hannah says, looking up at Catherine, your mother can be saved without sacrificing yourself. Lillian Hargrove has been trying for generations to escape her prison. First your grandmother, then your mother, now you. All Montgomery women with the power she needs. No, Lillian screams, pounding against the glass. She lies. Touch the mirror, Catherine. Touch it now. Catherine looks between Hannah and the mirror, uncertain who to believe. If what Hannah says is true, how do we save Mother and stop Lillian? Hannah rises, keeping herself between Catherine and the mirror. We must complete a different ritual, one that will seal Lillian in her prison forever, not release her. Don't listen to her, Lillian shrieks, her beautiful face distorting with fury. She has always been jealous of me, even in life. She wants to keep me imprisoned forever. A sudden realization dawns on Catherine. Hannah, did you know Lillian when she was alive? Hannah's expression is grim. Yes, Miss Catherine. I was her maid, just as I was your grandmother's, and now your mother's. I was with Lillian the night she died, the night she tried to cheat death by trapping her soul in the mirror. She's lying, Lillian hisses. She helped me perform the ritual. She wants my power for herself. Hannah ignores Lillian's accusations, speaking directly to Catherine. Lillian was dying of consumption. She made a pact with dark forces to preserve her youth and beauty, but when they came to claim her soul, she tried to escape into the world of reflections. The ritual was incomplete. She became trapped between worlds, neither fully here nor fully there. And now she wants to use me to complete the ritual and come back. Yes, but we can stop her, Catherine. We can end this cycle once and for all. Hannah reaches into her pocket and pulls out a small object, the miniature portrait of Lillian that Catherine had found behind the mirror the previous night. This is the key. Her essence is bound to this portrait as well as to the mirror. Lillian's screams reach a fever pitch, the glass of the mirror bulging dangerously as she throws herself against it from the other side. Give that to me. It's mine. Mine! Hannah hands the portrait to Catherine. Cast it into the fire. Quickly. It will break her connection to our world. Catherine takes the portrait and runs to the fireplace, where embers still glow from the evening fire. Behind her, she can hear Lillian's inhuman shrieks, and Hannah's steady voice chanting in that strange, ancient language. As Catherine holds the portrait over the fire, she hesitates. Will this hurt her? Will she feel pain? She is already dead, Miss Catherine, Hannah says, still kneeling beside Elizabeth. This will simply release her soul to its proper rest. Lies, Lillian howls. I will be destroyed, annihilated. Is that what you want, Catherine? To be a murderer? Catherine looks back at the mirror, where Lillian's face is contorted with rage and fear. For a moment she sees beyond the beautiful features to the desperate, frightened woman beneath, a woman who feared death so much that she damned herself to this half-existence. I'm sorry, Catherine whispers, and drops the portrait into the fire. The effect is immediate and terrifying. The portrait ignites with unnatural blue flames, and Lillian's screams reach an unbearable pitch. In the mirror, her form begins to dissolve, breaking apart like smoke in a strong wind. No, I won't go back to the darkness. I won't. Lillian's voice fades as her image disperses, leaving only normal reflections in the mirror. The bedroom, Hannah kneeling beside Elizabeth, Catherine standing by the fireplace with tears streaming down her face. The unnatural light fades, and the room returns to normal. The only sound is the crackling of the fire as it consumes the last of the portrait, and Elizabeth's soft, regular breathing. Hannah sighs deeply, the tension leaving her body. It's over, Miss Catherine. Truly over after all these years. Catherine rushes to her mother's side. Will she be all right? Yes, she's merely sleeping now. A natural sleep that will restore her. Hannah strokes Elizabeth's hair gently. She will remember nothing of this when she wakes. But I'll remember, Catherine says quietly. I'll I'll always remember. Hannah nods, her lined face solemn. Some burdens must be carried, Miss Catherine. But you won't carry this one alone. I will be here to help you understand. Was it real, Hannah? All of it? Or was it just imagination, like Mother believed? Hannah looks at the mirror, now reflecting nothing but the ordinary world. What is real, Miss Catherine? The things we can touch, or the things we can feel? Lillian was real in her way, as real as fear and desperation, and the hunger for life. Catherine thinks about this, about the boundary between the world of solid objects and the world of emotions and spirits. Will she find peace now? I believe so. She has been released from her prison between worlds. Her soul is free to move on to whatever awaits us all in the end. Elizabeth stirs, her eyelids fluttering. Catherine takes her hand, feeling warmth returning to her mother's skin. She's waking up. Hannah rises. I'll fetch some tea. And Miss Catherine, perhaps it would be best not to speak of tonight's events to your mother. Some memories are too difficult to bear. After Hannah leaves, Catherine sits beside her mother, holding her hand and watching her face. Elizabeth's eyes open slowly, confusion giving way to recognition. Catherine, what happened? Why am I on the floor? You fainted, Mother, Catherine says, the lie coming easily to protect her mother from the truth. While you were brushing my hair, Hannah has gone to fetch tea. Elizabeth sits up slowly, pressing a hand to her forehead. How strange. I don't remember feeling ill. It happened very suddenly. You gave me quite a fright. Elizabeth looks toward the vanity, where the mirror now stands uncovered, reflecting the ordinary bedroom. The mirror? Wasn't it covered? The sheet fell, Catherine explains. I didn't have a chance to replace it before you woke. Elizabeth studies the mirror for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she turns to Catherine with a smile that holds no trace of fear. Well, perhaps we don't need to cover it anymore. It's just a mirror after all. Catherine returns her mother's smile, recognizing the gift of forgetfulness that has been granted to Elizabeth. Just a mirror, she agrees. Later that night, as Catherine prepares for bed, she finds herself drawn to her own small hand mirror. She picks it up cautiously, half expecting to see Lillian's face looking back at her. But there is only her own reflection, a young girl with wise, sad eyes that have seen beyond the veil between worlds. She places the mirror face down on her bedside table and climbs into bed. Outside her window, the moon illuminates the garden, where roses sway gently in the night breeze. There is no figure in white moving among them tonight, no pale face turned up toward her window. As sleep begins to claim her, Catherine thinks she hears a whisper, so faint it might be nothing more than the wind. Thank you. The next day, Catherine and Elizabeth board the train for Boston, leaving behind the house with its mirrors and memories. Hannah stands on the platform, waving goodbye, her face serene with the knowledge that a long vigil has finally ended. Elizabeth chatters happily about their upcoming visit, her mind unburdened by the events of the previous night. Catherine listens and smiles, carrying within her the secret knowledge of what happened and what was averted. As the train pulls away from Willow Creek, Catherine looks out the window at the receding town, the church steeple, and the distant cemetery where James Montgomery and Lillian Hargrove both lie in their eternal rest. She touches the glass of the train window, feeling its solid reality beneath her fingers. In the reflection, she sees only herself, a young girl at the beginning of her journey, carrying within her the wisdom that comes from glimpsing the mysteries that lie beyond the surface of the everyday world. And for now, that is enough.